The night was supposed to be dazzling, yet it erupted in chaos. Reporters shouted as flashing sirens painted the skyline. Emma Sinclair, the supermodel adored by millions, was dragged into the back of a police car. The world had worshipped her flawless beauty, her runway dominance, her glittering life. Now the same world gasped as handcuffs tightened around her wrists. News anchors screamed scandal across every channel. A producer whispered, "This isn't gossip. This is crime." In the courthouse corridor, spectators froze as the gavel struck. Gasps echoed. Emma's face, once framed by diamonds, was now shadowed by disgrace. The illusion shattered in seconds. Behind the velvet curtains of fame lay a nightmare that no one imagined. This was not just a fall from grace. It was the unmasking of a crime so dark that it would haunt headlines forever. The scandal was not whispered in gossip columns, it was screamed on every channel. Emma Sinclair had been arrested, and the world demanded answers. Producers barked, "Run the footage again." Anchors declared her downfall with fire in their voices. Once adored as the face of elegance, she was now branded a criminal. The camera replayed her humiliation. Her silver gown, her smeared makeup, her eyes filled with fear. Emma had built an empire of beauty, but that empire trembled. Outside, storm winds howled as the city devoured her story. A journalist said, "We've never seen a fall this fast." Fans clutched their phones, replaying the moment endlessly. This was not the end of her glamour. This was the beginning of her public ruin. Emma once walked red carpets as a goddess. Tonight, she was paraded in chains. The contrast was devastating. Tabloids splashed side-by-side comparisons, her radiant smile at last year's gala against her tear-streaked mugshot. A commentator said, "This isn't just scandal. This is history." Outside the courthouse, fans screamed her name, torn between loyalty and betrayal. Some wept. Others jeered. Photographers climbed barricades, desperate to capture the perfect shot. Emma's silence fueled the frenzy. She had not spoken a word since the arrest. Her eyes, heavy with dread, told the story no headline could capture. Her empire was cracking, live before the world. Inside holding cells, Emma sat in silence. Her silver dress clung like a memory of better days. A policewoman said coldly, "No one is above the law." The air was damp, heavy with humiliation. Reporters outside roared, but inside time slowed. Emma's manicured hands trembled as she clutched steel bars. Memories of flashing lights and red carpets flickered in her mind. She whispered, "How did it come to this?" The sound echoed against stone walls. Fame had given her wings, but crime clipped them mercilessly. The first night of her downfall had begun, and there would be no escape. The world replayed the footage endlessly, dissecting every frame. Social media burned with outrage and disbelief. Hashtags trended. #Emma exposed, #modelinchins. Commentators debated her guilt before trial began. A fan posted, "She was my idol. Now she's a stranger." A critic sneered. She thought she was untouchable. Every opinion cut deeper. Emma's silence became fuel for speculation. Her beauty, once celebrated, became her weapon turned curse. The glittering image was shattered beyond repair. As the storm raged, one truth remained. The glamorous model was no longer untouchable. She was prey, surrounded by wolves waiting for the next scandalous bite. Before the scandal, Emma Sinclair was worshipped as the golden girl of fashion. She had risen from a small-town waitress to the face of luxury campaigns. Crowds adored her every step on the runway, seeing her as perfection. Critics hailed her as untouchable, a beauty wrapped in fire and silk. But fame has sharp teeth. Behind her flawless smile, secrets simmered. A controlling lover whispered doubts into her ear. Managers signed deals that shackled more than they freed. Emma smiled for the cameras, but her eyes sometimes betrayed exhaustion. One journalist once said, "Her glow isn't from lights, it's from burning too fast." Those who looked closer saw the cracks. They saw the truth. Every empire of beauty hides a shadow. For Emma, the shadow was waiting to swallow her whole. Emma's rise had been meteoric. She was once the girl working double shifts at diners, balancing plates while dreaming of stardom. A scout spotted her in a worn apron, seeing what no one else saw. Soon after, her face covered magazines, her walk owned the catwalks. Fans adored her resilience, her story of transformation. But hidden in her journey were contracts, inked in desperation. Fine print, carved chains, disguised as opportunities. An agent once whispered, "Nothing is free in this world, Emma." The glamour came with a price tag, and the collectors always came knocking. Even as applause surrounded her, Emma feared the debts she could never repay. Beauty had made her famous, but desperation had already bound her soul. Even in the height of her success, Emma carried wounds. Her closest companion, Daniel Cross, was a charming businessman who masked control with affection. In public, he kissed her hand, whispering devotion. In private, he decided who she spoke to, where she went, how she dressed. Friends warned, "He doesn't love you, he owns you." But Emma silenced the warnings with a smile, too afraid of losing him or the empire built around her. The love story the world adored was in truth a leash. Daniel fed her illusions of power while stripping her freedom thread by thread. The public saw romance. Emma felt chains, and those chains grew heavier each day, dragging her closer to ruin. Emma's enabler was her assistant, Claire Hart. Claire adored her, managed her schedule, and shielded her from chaos. Yet, Claire also hid the cracks, cleaning up scandals, erasing calls, burying receipts. She whispered, "I just want to protect you." But every silence, every cover-up only fueled Emma's descent. Claire lived in Emma's shadow, addicted to the glamour of proximity. To betray Emma meant losing her world too. To stay loyal meant drowning with her. The assistant who smiled behind Emma in photos was the same woman crying alone in hotel bathrooms. Emma believed Claire's loyalty kept her safe. In truth, it kept her blind. The enabler had become a silent accomplice in her destruction. For the public, Emma was perfection. For Emma, perfection was prison. Every interview, every photo shoot, every gala demanded her best mask. Paparazzi swarmed, their cameras slicing her skin like blades. Fans cheered her, but Emma saw their worship as chains of expectation. At a gala once, she whispered to Claire, "I don't know who I am anymore." The applause was deafening, but inside, her silence screamed. Each smile on the red carpet was a performance, each laugh rehearsed. And as the cheers rose louder, the small seed of doom grew stronger. The empire she built on beauty was not unbreakable. It was glass, and cracks were already spreading. One strike, one secret, and it would shatter. Emma Sinclair's world began to fracture like glass under pressure. Paparazzi captured her late-night escapes, her eyes hidden behind oversized sunglasses. Tabloids whispered of scandal, addiction, and debts. Daniel Cross tightened his grip, whispering reassurances in public but unleashing fury in private. Claire Hart, her loyal assistant, deleted calls and burned receipts, trying to shield Emma from the fallout. "The cracks are showing," muttered one journalist, snapping another invasive photo. On the red carpet, Emma's practiced smile flickered, trembling under the weight of flashing lights. Fans noticed, tweeting that she no longer seemed alive inside. Behind closed doors, Emma drowned herself in sleepless nights, whispered sobs, and unfinished glasses of wine. Every choice she made felt dangerous, every whisper of gossip a dagger. Her empire trembled on a fault line, and everyone could hear the rumble before the quake. The media smelled blood and showed no mercy. Headlines plastered Emma Sinclair's fall on every screen. From goddess to ghost, screamed one cover. Another claimed she was broke, addicted, and betrayed. Emma stared at the glossy pages that once crowned her flawless, now branding her toxic. Daniel hissed at her, "We need control, not chaos," as if her downfall were her fault. Claire whispered, "Ignore them, Emma. I'll fix it," though her tired eyes betrayed fear. Paparazzi shots caught Emma stumbling out of nightclubs, mascara smeared like war paint. Some fans wept, calling her broken. Others mocked her downfall, feeding on her humiliation. Emma clung desperately to her fading empire, convinced one good performance would save her. But each cruel headline was another nail in her coffin. Her image, once her shield, became a weapon wielded against her. Betrayal came not from enemies, but from friends. Stories leaked, revealing debts, violent arguments, and drug-laced nights. The press devoured her like vultures circling a dying animal. Emma sat in her luxury suite, her hands trembling around a glass of untouched wine. Claire warned, "They're everywhere, Emma. You can't hide." Daniel sneered, "They're just jealous, don't believe them." But Emma felt truth cutting deeper than lies. Paparazzi camped outside, flashes stabbing her windows. A neighbor whispered to reporters, "I hear screaming every night." Emma's phone rang endlessly, journalists demanding blood. She stared at her reflection, hollow eyes staring back, whispering, "Who am I?" Her silence no longer shielded her. It suffocated her. The goddess of glamour was now a prisoner of her own myth, cornered and hunted by the very world she once commanded. The spiral was public and merciless. Emma Sinclair arrived at a fashion gala where the crowd's cheers clashed with bitter boos. Once adored, now she was mocked as a fraud. Daniel leaned close, whispering through clenched teeth, "Smile, Emma. They smell weakness." Claire tugged her arm softly, whispering, "We should leave before it gets worse." But Emma stood paralyzed under blinding lights, her lips trembling in the endless storm of flashes. Photographers shouted accusations disguised as questions. A fan screamed, "We believed in you." Her heart shattered as tears threatened to break her mask. Every flash felt like a blade cutting deeper. She realized love had curdled into poison, and fame had turned into a trap. The empire of worship crumbled in real time, and Emma was powerless to stop the collapse. The breaking point came in silence. Emma Sinclair sat alone in her penthouse, rain streaking the glass walls. Claire had gone home exhausted. Daniel was missing, his phone off. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside her chest. Then the phone rang. She answered, her voice trembling. A stranger hissed, "We have proof. If you don't talk, we will." The line went dead. Emma's hand shook, the wine glass slipping from her fingers, shattering across marble floors. Her breath came fast, her chest tightening as panic consumed her. She whispered into the empty room, "Nothing will ever be the same." For the first time, she knew this was no longer scandal. It was war. That phone call slammed the door shut on innocence. The nightmare was no longer rumor. It was real, and it was coming for her. The phone call was not an empty threat. Within hours, documents surfaced, bank transfers, coded messages, hidden accounts. Emma Sinclair's name appeared in files tied to money laundering. The revelation stunned the world. Fans gasped, tabloids screamed, and prosecutors sharpened their knives. Emma whispered to Claire Hart, "This isn't true. It can't be." But Claire's silence was deafening, her trembling hands betraying knowledge she had long buried. Daniel Cross smirked as though the chaos were expected. "You thought Glamour was clean," he sneered. For the first time, Emma realized the danger was deeper than betrayal. This was no longer about gossip. It was crime on an empire scale, and her name was at the center. The leak revealed Daniel Cross had ties to organized crime. Shell companies linked to him funneled millions, and Emma's signature was on contracts. "They used me," she whispered, trembling. Daniel chuckled, "You were never innocent, Emma. You signed it all." Claire panicked, saying, "We should go to the police." But Emma knew too much was already public. The paparazzi swarmed her penthouse, while prosecutors demanded answers. Her silence was branded guilt. A journalist declared, "This isn't scandal, it's conspiracy." The goddess of beauty had become a pawn in a brutal game of power. The mask was ripped off, and the truth was uglier than anyone imagined. The investigator entered the stage. Detective Sarah Monroe, relentless and sharp, had tracked the money for months. "Every thread leads back to Emma Sinclair," she told her team. Sarah knew the glamour had wrought. She stared at photos of Emma on red carpets, now pinned with red strings across a board of bank records. "She isn't just a victim," Sarah warned. "She's a player." In smoky rooms, prosecutors debated how to charge her. Meanwhile, Daniel whispered sweet poison, telling Emma she could escape if she stayed quiet. But silence was no longer safety. It was the rope tightening around her neck. The betrayal cut deeper when Emma discovered Claire's secret. Her loyal assistant had been feeding prosecutors information. "I did it to save you," Claire sobbed. But Emma's fury was volcanic. "You destroyed me," she screamed. Claire's tears fell as she confessed. "You were drowning, Emma. I couldn't watch anymore." Daniel smirked in the shadows, knowing the fracture would end them both. The woman who once cleaned up Emma's mess had become the silent witness, holding the truth the world needed. Loyalty had turned to survival. For Emma, it was the final wound. Everyone she trusted had carved her apart. The twist was complete. Emma Sinclair, once a goddess of beauty, was revealed as a central figure in a sprawling scandal. The world gasped as leaked recordings played. Daniel plotting deals, Emma's voice faint in agreement. "This isn't who I am," Emma cried. But the proof screamed otherwise. Media flooded with fury, prosecutors smelled blood, and fans abandoned her in droves. Detective Sarah Monroe whispered, "She's not untouchable anymore." Emma's glittering empire had been unmasked, its foundation built on shadows and lies. The mask was gone, and the woman behind it was no longer adored. She was hunted. The courtroom was packed, cameras flashing like lightning. Emma Sinclair walked in, wrists bound, eyes hollow. She whispered to herself, "I am not guilty." But whispers in the gallery called her liar. Daniel Cross smirked from his seat, untouched by charges, watching her collapse. Claire Hart sat trembling in the witness area, face pale with guilt. Detective Sarah Monroe read aloud the evidence, her voice steady as steel. Reporters scribbled furiously, their pens carving Emma's ruin into history. The air thickened with judgment. Every breath she took felt like a blade across her throat. This was no longer glamour. It was war, and Emma stood defenseless at its center. The prosecution struck hard. Sarah Monroe presented bank statements, recordings, and Emma's signature on contracts. Gasps rippled as the jury leaned forward. Emma's eyes blurred with tears. "They tricked me," she whispered, but no one listened. Daniel leaned back, his smile sharp as a knife. Claire closed her eyes, shaking as her loyalty and betrayal crushed her together. The media feasted on every revelation, headlines already written before the trial ended. The goddess of beauty was dragged into filth, her name synonymous with fraud. Every word spoken in court was another dagger. Emma's empire burned to ashes in public view. When Claire Hart took the stand, silence gripped the courtroom. She trembled as she admitted covering Emma's secrets. "I thought I was protecting her," she confessed, tears streaking her face. Emma's eyes widened, betrayal flooding through her. "Claire, how could you?" she whispered, voice cracking. Daniel's smirk deepened, enjoying the spectacle of collapse. Reporters captured the moment, their cameras hungry. Claire sobbed, "I loved her too much to let go." The gallery erupted in murmurs. Loyalty had rotted into complicity. For Emma, the betrayal was final. Even love had abandoned her. The empire she trusted was gone, shattered from within. The climax sharpened when recordings played aloud. Emma's voice was faint, agreeing with Daniel's schemes. The courtroom gasped, and she shook her head violently. "That's not what I meant," she cried, her voice breaking. Judge Miller struck his gavel, silencing the chaos. "Order," he roared. Sarah Monroe's steady voice cut through. "The evidence speaks for itself." Daniel leaned back, triumphant. Claire covered her face, unable to look. Emma's tears fell unchecked as the jury stared coldly. Every second burned deeper. The glamour was gone. The goddess was gone. What remained was a broken woman watching her life collapse in front of millions. The verdict came swiftly. Guilty. The word echoed like thunder. Emma Sinclair froze, her face drained of life. The courtroom roared. Some cheered, some wept. Reporters sprinted out, hungry for the headline of the decade. Emma whispered, "This isn't the end." But her voice was drowned in noise. Judge Miller declared sentencing, his voice firm, years behind bars. Daniel smirked untouched, free to walk out. Claire wept, her tears silent apologies. Detective Sarah Monroe remained stone-faced, her mission complete. Cameras flashed relentlessly, capturing Emma's shattered soul. The world watched her collapse, a goddess turned to ash. The verdict was not the end. It was only the beginning of her ruin. The verdict echoed long after the courtroom emptied. Emma Sinclair sat in a holding cell, her silver gown now replaced by a dull uniform. She whispered, "I used to be adored." The silence mocked her. Claire Hart visited briefly, her tears failing to bridge the gulf between them. "I never wanted this," Claire said softly. But Emma turned away, bitterness carving her face. Daniel Cross' smirk haunted her memory. He walked free while she carried chains. Reporters swarmed outside, eager to immortalize her downfall. Detective Sarah Monroe closed the file, remarking, "Justice is never glamorous." Emma's empire was gone. The world had moved on, but she remained, alone in the shadows of her ruin. The mansion once filled with champagne and laughter stood empty. Dust-coated mirrors that once reflected diamonds. Photographs of Emma on magazine covers lay torn on the floor. The silence screamed louder than applause ever had. Neighbors avoided the gates, whispering about curses. Paparazzi, once camped outside, no longer cared. The empire had collapsed into ruins. A gardener muttered, "She had everything, and now it's nothing." The echoes of parties lingered, ghosts of fame wandering halls where no one lived. Emma's home had become her tombstone, a relic of vanity turned into decay. Fame had fled, leaving emptiness behind. Claire Hart's life too lay in ruins. Once loyal assistant, now branded as traitor, she was hounded by both media and guilt. She sat in her small apartment, scrolling through messages filled with hate. "You destroyed her," one fan wrote. Claire wept, whispering, "I tried to save her." Her silence had protected Emma once, but her testimony sealed Emma's fate. Claire's eyes hollowed, as she realized her loyalty chained her forever to Emma's downfall. She had lost her career, her reputation, and the only person she ever truly loved. In saving Emma, she had destroyed herself too. Daniel Cross thrived in the ashes. With Emma gone, he charmed new investors, his smirk sharper than ever. At a luxury bar, he raised his glass. To survival, he toasted, laughter surrounding him. No charges touched him. He walked free, powerful, and untouchable. Yet, whispers followed. Those who knew his ties to crime feared him but never confronted him. The man who had pulled Emma's strings walked away richer, his sins buried under Emma's ruin. For him, Emma was collateral damage. For the world, she was the cautionary tale. Daniel remained the hidden hand, unseen but undefeated. Detective Sarah Monroe filed away Emma's case, her expression unreadable. "It's done," she said, but her eyes betrayed unease. Justice had been served, yet victory felt hollow. Emma Sinclair was not just guilty, she was destroyed. The trial revealed corruption too deep to fully erase. Sarah lit a cigarette outside the courthouse, rain falling softly, and whispered, "There are no winners here." The goddess had fallen, the enabler was broken, the betrayer was thriving, and the witness was haunted. Fame had devoured another soul, and justice left only ashes. The world had moved on. But Sarah knew the darkness remained. Emma Sinclair sat alone in her prison cell, rain tapping against barred windows. She whispered, "I was once a goddess." The silence replied with nothing. Her fame was erased, her name etched in disgrace. Claire Hart visited only once more, her tears an empty apology. Daniel Cross thrived far away, untouched and untouchable. Detective Sarah Monroe closed her file, yet her eyes carried a shadow. The world had stopped caring. But Emma's collapse remained a scar on culture. She wasn't just broken. She was forgotten, the silence heavier than judgment. For Emma, this was the cruelest punishment of all. The media moved on, but not without leaving scars. Tabloids ran her downfall in retrospectives, turning her into a cautionary tale. She had it all, and lost it all, one headline declared. Talk shows dissected her every misstep, feeding ratings with her ruin. Fans who once idolized her now mocked her as a meme. Emma's beauty, once currency, had become a relic. Every photograph of her in chains was replayed endlessly, as if the world wanted to watch her fall forever. Fame had not just abandoned her. It devoured her, spat her out, and kept chewing the bones of her memory. Claire Hart, haunted by guilt, stood at Emma's old mansion gates. The house was overgrown, vines crawling up cracked walls. She whispered, "I tried to save you." Her tears fell on the rusted lock. Claire carried both betrayal and love, trapped between them like chains. No career awaited her, no forgiveness healed her. She had been Emma's shadow, and when Emma fell, the shadow burned too. Daniel's smirk haunted her. Sarah Monroe's voice echoed, "No one walks away clean." Claire looked at the empty house, her reflection caught in broken glass, and wondered if her silence had destroyed them both. Daniel Cross raised another glass in celebration. He whispered to a partner, "She took the fall, just as planned." His laughter echoed through a smoky bar, but shadows followed him. Some whispered that enemies were closing in. Others swore Emma's ghost would never release him. Yet Daniel thrived, untouchable for now. His name was clean, his pockets deeper than ever. He had not been ruined by the scandal, he had profited. The world believed Emma was destroyed by her enemies. But the truth was colder. She was destroyed by him. And Daniel raised his glass to her ashes without regret. The final blow came not with noise, but silence. Emma Sinclair walked out of prison gates years later, older, broken, unseen. No fans, no cameras, no applause. The world had moved on. She whispered, "I am still here." But no one answered. Fame had devoured her, and betrayal had buried her. Detective Sarah Monroe once said, "The story isn't over." She was right. Emma was alive, but her soul had been erased. The goddess was gone. What remained was a ghost wandering in daylight. And in the end, the world never knew the darkest truth. Mama's ruin was only the beginning of someone else's empire.